Another technique you can use is stacking your UVs. This has nothing to do with performance, but it can help you save some texture space by reusing the same texture for different parts of your model. As I mentioned in a previous video, one of the things I thought I could improve on this model was how I dealt with the feathers. You can see here that I have almost every feather here uniquely unwrapped, at least on half of the model. But I think I could have gotten away with just making one feather and just duplicating that, and in having all the feathers essentially use the same UV space. I mean, the reason why I didn't do that to begin with was because I was hoping to paint maybe a subtle gradient that went across all the feathers, but when I tried it, it didn't quite look as good as I thought it would. So, just a bad decision on my part, and I think I could have done that with anywhere there's feathers here, on the bottom of the skirt and around the hips and the gloves here. Back in the day when all you had to worry about was the diffuse map, stacking UVs was a lot easier to do, because with normal maps you're kind of restricted to parts that either don't visibly seam up with other areas or areas where you've carefully planned for stacking. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean that it's not possible. In this example, I've normal mapped this high poly shape onto a much simpler cylinder here. I'm missing out on a lot of the silhouette detail, but there's only so much I could have done with an 8-sided cylinder shape. But my point is that you could take something like this with pretty simple UV layout here, and you can see how it baked, and you could turn it into a shape like this pretty easily. Well, if you've carefully planned for it. I mean, all I did was I just subdivided, or not subdivided, I just added divisions along the length here, and then duplicated it, end to end, and merged the vertices, and then deformed it into a shape like this. So you can make a tube of essentially endless length, and all it would be using it would be a UV space, the same UV space as this one chunk here. I think environment and prop artists in particular have to be masters of using tricks like this, and they have a lot of other tricks as well, but it's something that a character artist should definitely experiment with as well. And it's another thing that is worth thinking about early on when you're building a model, just to see what other kind of ways you can find to optimize your UV space and texture usage. I figured I should probably try to explain how I did this in greater detail. So what I did was, I have this low poly shape, and then I made a high poly shape, and all I did was I originally built this without this twist in it, so it was going straight, and then I used the twist deformer in Maya, and I just twisted it 90 degrees so that from this side it's now 90 degrees going this way to on over here, and I just know that this end here is going to seam up with this end here. So when I lay out the UVs, it'll come out to be like this, where this end would match up with this end. Now the tricky thing here is that you want it to be you want to make sure that you have enough information going to the edges of this shape. And the way I did that was I just took my original shape, I duplicated, moved it exactly over in the like that, and then also the same on the other end. Like this. And then I welded this, or I merged these three, welded it so that it was just one continuous piece. And then I just deleted the parts I didn't need, because I just needed it to overshoot the shape of what I was baking on a little bit. And once I had that done, I needed to edit my low poly baking mesh, and I did that the same way. Making sure that you've already laid out your UVs on it. I duplicated it. Same thing. Move it over like that. Duplicate it again. Onto the other side. And then I combine these, merge the vertices, and then I soften the normals. And I think it's important to soften the normals in this case, because the final mesh here is using all softened normals all along here, and I wanted whatever I baked to have that on the ends of the normal map. I wanted it to take into account that, hey, I'm being softened. So after I did that, I took these two ends and I offset the UVs. You can see there's some UVs offset here, and we'll talk about offsetting UVs again a little bit later. But the reason why it's necessary is just to have the normal map render correctly, but it also depending on the game engine, to show up correctly in the game engine. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So then, after I did that, I had a chunk here that with the proper normal map that I know would tile correctly. And then, after that, it's just a matter of, as I said before, adding divisions, duplicating it on both sides, and using whatever way you'd like to deform it into whatever shape you need. In this case, I used spline IK, basically just drawing a joint chain down the line and then adding a spline IK and then editing the points to create a pretty smooth curve like this.